All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. I want to do a video here about the things that, in my experience, have been sort of the top reasons for bad mental health, bad emotional health, just the reasons for feeling really bad in life kind of over the past 10 years that I've experienced, and hopefully that'll be helpful. So we're going to start out on the more specific side of it, and then I'm going to get into some of the more sort of broad things, because this is it's a big topic. There's lots of different factors, obviously, but when I just quickly look to break this down into what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got 9 things here that I think are big factors when it comes to kind of thriving versus just surviving, kind of mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and all that. So let's run through these, and hopefully it's helpful. All right, the number one thing I've got here, the number one thing that is going to affect your mental health, throw you off, it's going to make it worse, it's going to make you anxious and depressed, is alcohol. And that might be personal. Maybe that's not for everybody, but it kind of does seem to be for everybody. When you drink alcohol, it changes your kind of state of being. It makes you feel really good for a bit, but then you're going to end up feeling, even if you're not hungover, you're going to go from a place of like feeling like everything's okay. I think we've all had that, where you have a couple drinks and you're kind of like, man, there's all these like cool, like I feel good now, everything's better, there's possibilities, like everything just seems better, but then that just goes away. And so it's this really like unbalancing thing where you go through feeling good, but then it's not real. Unfortunately, as much as like I love drinking, I love celebrating, and I love everything that goes along with alcohol in terms of kind of the celebratory aspect of it, but the truth is it can make you think that things are like a certain way when they're not. So it ends up like hiding from your real problems. It ends up hiding from reality. And a lot of the time we're just leaning on that because we're already going through a bad time. And just the human tendency, I think, is to lean on those things that make us feel good. There's like a crazy storm going on right now, so hopefully the power doesn't go out. But that's the number one, alcohol. And yeah, hangovers are just awful. They've just continually gotten worse for me. And I'm definitely leaning towards just more and more phasing alcohol out of my life. I still have it here and there. But the few times, maybe like twice in the past year that I've gotten actually hungover, maybe 3 times, I'm just like, holy, like this is just so bad. Like it's the clear lever to pull if you're trying to like better your life. It's like, cut that out. So alcohol is the first one. And I know, bit of a party pooper to say that, but that's the truth. Yeah, it's a pretty wild storm. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Number 2 is food. Talk about that a lot on this channel, but it can be the difference between feeling amazing and feeling absolutely shitty in terms of your actual like brain and your perspective on life, and even physically, aches and pains and that kind of thing. So food, don't need to say a ton here. The closer you get to a carnivore diet, usually the better for most people, I believe. So animal-based proteins and fats, especially emphasis on the fat for your brain and for feeling good. I think, especially if you want big change, the closer you can move towards that, the better. The further you get away from that, pretty much the worse. Obviously, you could have a more whole foods or clean, like vegetarian diet might still be better than just all the processed food. But for me, the further I get from kind of a high fat kind of whole foods animal-based diet, the worse I feel. And there's big offenders there like gluten and just sugar, seed oils, things that actually can just really mess you up, make you feel depressed. Same thing kind of with the alcohol. They give you a little bit of euphoria, but then they're gonna leave you out to dry there. So food's the second one. The third one is weed, and I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I have enough. Definitely leaned on it when I was really anxious a few years ago and kind of depressed. Definitely as an escape, just wanted to feel good because I felt so bad all the time, and it sort of works. So there's that. And then also some people say it really works for them in terms of like anxiety. I haven't never had a ton of a success with CBD. A lot of people go on about CBD. I'll probably give that another try, and I haven't like said I've wanted weed to work for me in a good way, but honestly, it doesn't seem to really help me. It seems to do more of what the alcohol does. It seems to make me feel good for a little bit. And then more recently, though, it seems to actually make me prone to more panic attacks. So I've just avoided it for that reason. So I actually think it also exacerbated some of my kind of mental health symptoms back a few years ago, because it once again created that space where everything was fine, but really in my life it wasn't fine. So it was like feeling that warm blanket of everything's fine when you're kind of high, and then when you come out of that, you're like everything's not fine. And so it creates this like duality that you live in that's just really unstable, and it's not a great place to build from. So that's why I have weed at number 3. Number 4 is caffeine, and kind of a love-hate relationship with caffeine, because it's kind of like the silent killer, I'll say, because it can be fine for the most part, and I still play around with it here and there, but I just have noticed like your chances of being more of having more anxiety with caffeine is just seems to be the case, not just with me, but with other people I've talked to. People who don't even think they have anxiety problems will cut caffeine out and say that. I was talking to 2 friends, and they said my anxiety was just way better when I cut caffeine out. So it's one of those things that I think when you're feeling good, it's fine. When you're stable and you have a routine or whatever it is, it can be fine. It can be a life enhancement. It can be really fun, whether that's coffee, pre-workout, whatever it is. But I think it's one of those things that if things end up kind of going bad for you, or you're feeling anxious or depressed, and you start leaning on it, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then all of a sudden it's going to be a factor that can contribute to kind of panicky feelings or high anxiety. So it's like caffeine's definitely on there because it can throw you off. But yeah, that's just going to be a case by case kind of situation. And I still do, I don't have a ton of coffee anymore, but I still have it sometimes. And I definitely find it's one of those things that sometimes it's just not a problem at all if your things are going good. But then it can be a real problem if things are kind of not going great and you're leaning on it more and more to feel good. It's going to make you more and more anxious. And I did notice when I went off it for a significant amount of time when I was strict carnivore and then came back to it, I had never felt that much of the, it made me anxious. It upset my stomach, and it was like I had to get used to it again. So I definitely noticed like it brought anxiety back with it, but I wasn't like scared of the anxiety because I knew kind of what it was from. Got some water leaking in here. But anyways, I wasn't like scared of that anxiety, but it just brought back anxiety. So if you put that anxiety that kind of caffeine brings, those jitters, and you put that on top of kind of what might be like real life problems, it can just magnify them and make them worse. So that's why caffeine's on there. Okay, we're getting a little more broad now, but the next one, and once again, this is kind of in my experience, but is no structure / a bad environment. So I've just noticed that as hard as it can be to make plans if you're feeling bad or have structure, that is a huge factor. So not having things to do, not being in an environment that is just sort of, there's nothing to kind of build off of. There's no events to build your life around. Even if it's just day to day, that's just going to cause problems. You're going to fall into just this hole where you don't want to do anything. You don't feel like doing anything. And it's just going to make you want to hide from it. So then you're going to lean on those other things again, probably like weed or alcohol. So in my experience, like no structure or / the environment that I'm in, it might be an environment just where it's like, oh, people are always like, let's just do these things that, lead, like that kind of numb us. Right. So, that's just going to set you up for, and that goes like with the people you're around, whatever it is. No structure can be on a day-to-day, or it can be like in your life basically too. But that kind of leads into the next one, which is a helpless mentality. And this is a really tough thing because this is number 6. Boop, boop. Number 6 is helpless mentality. This can be really easy to fall into, especially if you do suffer like with a lot of anxiety or depression. It feels like it's out of your control. And I think it's important to realize that some stuff kind of is out of your control. Like you have to surrender in order to get through it, but other stuff really is in your control. And to shift out of the helpless mentality means like, okay, I can't change everything, but like I can go, like sweep the floor, or like I can do something. And it's really, I can do something specific and something small. And it's really crazy how much of a change those things can make. And they give you control back over your life again. In a very small way, but it's like they can be really big. So that sounds kind of simple, but staying in like a helpless mentality will basically freeze you up, and it will create more helplessness. So if you can switch into a taking responsibility mentality, even over very small things, where you're like, I'm going to make a small plan, I'm going to do a small thing, it proves to yourself, even though you don't believe it, that you can actually not be helpless and that you can create change. Once again, those can be very small things like doing some dishes or cleaning up your room a little bit, getting rid of some stuff, whatever it is. Those can give you agency over your life and help you to realize that you're not helpless. So number 7 is limiting beliefs. And once again, this is even more vague, but it's a huge one. And I've just realized it seems to be more and more true the more insight and kind of experience and the older I get. People always used to talk about mindset. I'd listen to podcasts or things like that, or successful people, and I would kind of brush it off because I'd be like, mindsets, that's kind of silly, like it doesn't really matter, or it's like easy for you to say because you've made money or you're successful or you're not dealing with these issues that I'm dealing with. But honestly, that's the thing about limiting beliefs, is they're so real. So they can be hard to identify because there's this quote that goes something like, we question all our beliefs except those which we believe most strongly and those we never question at all. And those are really places we can end up in, is not questioning those things at all. So it's literally automatic that we think, oh, I can't do that. I'm not attractive. I could never be happy in a relationship. I could never find work that I like. I could ever not be depressed. They're everywhere. And in my experience, the list was really long. It still is in some ways, but limiting beliefs are very real, and it can be pretty wild to start identifying some of them and be like, oh, that's my reality, but that is literally a limiting belief because I believe it and it's not serving me. So that's a really big one. That's where maybe some journaling could come in. And for me, I've just realized that I've just had some really strong ones for a long, long time, and they take time to unwind. It's not an overnight thing, but identifying those and starting to move through those is definitely a big one. The next one is not having any context for meaning about your life. This definitely gets into like the spiritual side of things. So I'm Catholic, and I have, I see purpose in suffering. I see, it's not all just about this life. It's about, in a lot of ways we can lay down our life. And there's that Bible passage about whoever, saves his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life, for my sake, the passage goes, whoever loses life for my sake will save it. So there's that idea of like, you can lay down your life. That's not a waste. It's not, the suffering isn't like a waste of your life. There's actually purpose. There's redemptive suffering, sort of another topic. But this, on sort of a more secular level, even is it Viktor Hegel? Anyways, the Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, I think. Man's Search for Meaning is this famous book about this guy who survived the concentration camps, and the people who survived found meaning in what they were going through. And so if you're stuck, depressed, or whatever, you need to find some meaning in it, or else I don't think you can get through it. So you got to find like, okay, I'm going to be able to help other people through this, or this is helping me grow. I'm learning something, whatever it is. Finding meaning or context for what you're going through is everything. Because if you only see it as like this like punishment that's been assigned to you that is doesn't serve any purpose, that's when you're going to give into despair. That's when you're just going to give up, and you won't have the strength to get through it. So you got to see it. There is meaning, and finding meaning in it can transform it. It can totally transform your experience. So that's big. And then number 9, there's 9 here, is distance from values. And this gets into more like just how you're living your life out on a daily basis. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those situations where you're like maybe talking to people, you're at an event, or you're just carrying on in a way, or you're with people and you're like, this is not like who I am. This is not what I want to be doing. I'm not saying things that make me feel stronger or that make me feel real. I'm kind of like, it's just one of those weird situations where you're like, I'm just far from my values. Like this is not, and I have felt over the years, like just sometimes very far. It's like, this is like not who I am. I'm just sort of selling myself short here, and I'm just very far from from my values, which I mean, whatever those might be for you. Like I like creativity, responsibility, making things, inspiring other people, just doing all these things. And I'd be, drinking somewhere or whatever, and it'd just be like just messing around or just talking about gossiping or something, and it's like, this is just not the person I want to be. And when that happens day in and day out, and you don't really know how to get you don't know how to get close to your values, you feel lethargic, you feel depressed, you give into those other things, and then you just go back to those things at the beginning of the list, which are like the food, and these are kind of like the underlying reasons why you go back to those things. So there's this cool example I once learned in this something called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a really neat thing, and it's worth looking into if you feel kind of stuck in life or you're starting to learn about psychology. But this is basically, it's this cool model for learning to change your behavior if it's not serving us, or you're struggling with addiction or whatever it is. And it's living close to our values is something that can bring us back in line with ourselves. So they've got this cool thing called, it's like the rope exercise. And so if you write down your values and you kind of plot them like a rope along the ground, kind of on this trail, and then it's like walking along that, walking close to that keeps you close to your values. And then when you fall off that, you're getting further from your values. So that's what kind of happens when you, I don't know if that makes sense, but when you get far away from them, you're not in line with that. So that's like a simple exercise for like, okay, how can I bring it back? You could even list out like 1, 3, 4. You could list out some things that are your values that you could walk in line with, that you could do, and then you're sort of going to bring yourself back. But that takes time in my experience, because a lot of the time you don't even know what to do to get back in line with yourself. But a lot of the time that comes back to your own interests, kind of like what lights you up, what gets you interested. And even if it feels kind of stupid, like making time for that and focusing on that is going to really help you to feel like yourself again, to come alive again. And then you're going to have more strength to not kind of give in to those other numbing behaviors and things like that. But these things all work together. And I know that's kind of like a vague, list, especially the second half of it. But I've kind of seen that in my own life. These things kind of tie together, and also they're the things that really bring me away. I'm going to do a bonus one because this should have been closer to the top of the list because it's definitely huge. But the final one I'll just put in there is sleep. And maybe this should actually be number 1, but sleep is huge. And it sounds like silly sometimes, but I've noticed for me, a bad night of sleep can just put me on edge. It can make me anxious. I can be kind of depressed. I can be whatever. If I don't sleep well, it can kind of sabotage my day, especially if bad sleep is combined with alcohol or something like that, or with bad food or something. Because you start to combine the things on these lists, then you get really messed up. And for some people, it's night and day. And for me, it's pretty strong. It can go from like feeling good and doing things I want to do to just totally falling off from my wagon, totally falling off the wagon in terms of what I'm supposed to be doing, and leading to more things like, because when you start indulging in some of these things, more of them come. So it could be this whole other list of things on there. And maybe like a final one would be like something like pornography, which is just like another numbing behavior, but maybe that's in its own category. But just that could be something that is just like another numbing behavior. But anyways, maybe I'll talk about that a different time. But hopefully that's helpful. Just run through this list again. I had alcohol, food, weed, caffeine, no structure and bad environment, helplessness mentality, limiting beliefs, no context for meaning. I'm actually one ahead here. And then the last one was distance from your values. So hopefully that's helpful. These are just things that I've identified. It's hard to keep track of them all at once, but if you kind of start going through this list or start changing them, I think from the top down is actually better. Maybe start changing them to more specific ones, like the food and the booze and the things that are numbing you. And then you can identify the other things. Because when you get some of that garbage out of the way, you can actually start to see what's going on. Whereas if you're just kind of numbing your way through, then you have no clue. You can't identify your limiting beliefs. You don't know what you're supposed to be doing and all that stuff. So, and then the bonus one was sleep, because that's just huge. But anyways, guys, hopefully that was helpful. And those are things that I found that have kind of derailed me and continue to still derail me sometimes. And when I identify those and kind of get them lined up, it's night and day difference in terms of how I feel. So thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy this channel, please like it and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon.